Archival makers, today I wanted to talk about two projects. I know there's three things here, but basically two projects that I made using the Creative Blocks stamp set CMS 464 as my base. And I used basically the same technique, but I changed it up a little bit so that I could have one home decor piece and two cards out of it. I paired them with the Bold Botanicals and the Inspector to make the cards and the home decor piece. So I'm looking forward to talking with you about these. And with this one, you'll see as I go along and show you how I made these. But I did harken back to an old kit that Tim and Ranger used to sell called the Distress Paper Mosaic Kit. And it had kind of some grout and then some glue to hold it down and then a glaze that went over it. And I don't think these are available anymore. I'm not really sure if they are. So I used some things that I have that are available, and I'll talk about that in the tutorial portion to do this. And kind of, I wanted it to be kind of like a tile background using these architectural creative blocks in the background here. And then, you know, this is kind of the same feeling, but for those of you who didn't want to go into the mixed media route and just wanted to do paper crafting, I wanted to show that you could do that with cards also. All right, so let's get started on making with the Creative Blocks stamp set. For this project, I'm going to be using a few images from the Inspector CMS 465, and the entire background is going to be the Creative Blocks CMS 464. I think these are pretty cool. I have a couple of different ideas for them. The one today is using archival inks, something that you can kind of use to stamp with. And then I have some watercolor cardstock, and I'm using the smooth side. So here's the rough side. I'm using the smooth side. So here's how I'm going to do this. I have my grip mat down here. I'm going to start with my lightest color, the Archival. And you want to just get this really inked up with the hickory smoke. So that's the color I'm starting with. And then I'm going to add in just a little bit of, let me pull this thread off. And I'm just going to swipe across here and there in just a couple spots. So I'm not pushing the whole thing down. I just ran across in a couple of spots, and same thing with this black soot. So that was ground espresso, and I'm doing a little bit of black soot here and there. Then take your watercolor paper, you're going to lay it down, make sure it stays in the same spot. You're going to push this over it, holding it so that you don't want it to move. You want it to stay in the same spot, but you want contact all over. And then you can even use your hands. And there you go. So I'm going to dry that, and then I will be doing a little bit of inking in some neutrals. Then I'm going to cut these apart and use them as tiles. I think they're pretty cool. And my other idea, which will probably come later, is I'm going to stamp the whole thing just like this, but I'm going to brayer ink, I'm going to brayer Distress paint onto it and then stamp it onto canvas. I think that'll be awesome. Okay. So there you can see it. That's going to be the base for us to make some stamps. So I'm going to clean this up, and then we'll get on to making, tiles. Then we'll get on to making our tiles. I have another piece of the smooth side of the watercolor cardstock. I have the Inspector and then the Sentiment Strictly Handmade in here. And I'm just going to be stamping those with, hang on, because I want that a little mixture too. So he's going to have ground espresso. as well as on the sentiment. Okay, and then just a touch of some black soot here and there so that I get even pressure. Okay, there we go. And you can just see that little bit of black soot, and then the ground espresso. That's the look I want. All right, for a second option, I have some of the flowers from Bold Botanicals CMS 462, and I'm going to do the same stamping technique. So let's get that on here. So it's mostly an even cover of ground espresso distress archival ink on both the images and the sentiment. And then you're just doing a little touch here and there of the black soot. Press it down. Get yourself some good coverage. Lift it up. I think that's pretty good. Yep, I like it. I'm going to clean up and we'll move on. All right, I made 3 stamped pages of the creative blocks, all done the same way that I showed you. I have my 3 main images, and so I want to show you that I'm going to be doing 2 cards. So I'm going to be cutting 5x7 card bases out of distressed watercolor cardstock, or you could use heavy stock. And I have a mini clipboard because I want to make a decor piece as well as cards to show that you can do the same basic technique, just slight differences on both of these. So, and we have a rare appearance in the studio today. Studio cat today happens to be my first ever cat that we had as a married couple. He's been with us for 10 years now. And actually, we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary, aren't we, sweet boy? It's my cat, Patriot. He's an orange tabby, and he's camera shy, but he's hanging out with me today in the studio supervising. He's our alpha cat, and yeah, he's very special. So he showed up in our backyard at a very timely moment for me, just about 10 years ago on the 20th of this month. So I'm very happy that he's in here with me today. All right, so let's not let him down. Let's get started and get some stuff made. And to make the tiles a little more colorful, for one of them, the one with the inspector, I added just antique linen, lost shadow, and uncharted mariner. I just did some drops over it so you can see the 3 different colors throughout. And then I'm going to let that dry. For this one, I'm going to wet it because I don't want the drops really to stand out too much. And I'm just doing for this one and the third one, I'm just doing the lost shadow and antique linen and calling it good. So once I get it on there, I'm happy with it. I think I want a little more antique linen. There we go. Then I'm going to actually do this. And that's it. Okay, so I'm going to do that to the other one and then dry them. the 2 sets for the cards completely finished. I'm going to put some microglaze over it. I want to pull the stamped image out, and so I think that the microglaze will do that on this one. For this one that's going to have the inspector on it, I'm just going to leave it as is, except that I want it to look like tiles, and so I'm going to spray it with a layer of Distress Resist spray because I want it to be shiny. Alright, and if you look carefully, you can definitely see that it did pull out the stamped image in the archival. It pulled the archival ink to the front, which is what I wanted. It's very distressed, which is also what I wanted, but I didn't want the archival to be in the background as much as it is on the one with just the distress stain over it. So I really prefer this with the microglaze. All right, so as you can see, I am cutting out the paper in some squares, and I'm just doing this roughly, so I don't really want it perfect. You can see how the edges aren't perfect along here, so I'm just gonna go through and I just kind of move my scissors back and forth. If I wanted, I could try and do this on the decal, but it's just easier and actually less uniform this way. I can round the corners, and these are all going to be close to the same size. Some of them may be a little smaller, a little larger. That's okay. I really want this to look imperfect. And so you can see that I'm making the tiles so that they fit on here. And I'm kind of trying to do a little bit of, like, I have this in my drawer from years ago. So Tim used to sell a distress paper mosaic kit, and it came with some grout, some glue, and then a glaze that went on top. And so since most people can't get these anymore, I thought this was super fun. I made some eggs with it for Easter one year. What I decided to do is do like the best version I can right now. So I'm going to be putting grit paste, a layer of grit paste on here, and then I'll be pressing these in with a bit of Distress Collage Medium on the back, sticking them in. And before I do all of that, once I have these all cut out, I'm going to lay them in my splat box, and I'm going to spray Distress Resist spray over them so that they have that shiny glazed look. And it will dry very quickly, and then I can just glue them in. And it'll make it a little bit faster than the Mosaic kit. But if you have one of those, you really should try it. They're super fun to do. But this is kind of the, I don't know, a little different take on that kit. So I'm going to finish cutting out maybe 2 more rows of these, and then I'll get started on the other steps. The Distress Resist spray has dried, and you can see that it really brought out the colors, and it's got this shiny kind of uneven texture on it because it is a spray. I really like that. It kind of gives it more of a handmade tile look, which is what I was going for. So now I'm going to start spreading very quickly in areas the grit paste. I'm going to add some collage medium to the back, and I'm going to press these down into it, and I'm going to work my way all the way up to the top. I apologize. I thought I had my camera on when I was working on the bottom portion of the clipboard, and I didn't have it on. So as you can see, I am using a palette knife to spread a thin layer, not too thin. You want it thick enough that it looks like some grout. So get a nice layer of the grit paste, wide enough that you can fit a row of tiles, and then go just a little bit above it so that you can tie in when you add the next row. Then put collage medium on the back of each tile and press it into that layer of grit paste. As you can see, I am wiping off the grit paste that squeezed between the tiles when I pushed them in. And I wanted it to do that because I want it to really mimic a mosaic. Now you can see that I'm adding on to the next layer. And so that's why you want to go above just a little bit. Sorry, it's off camera, but this row of tiles that I'm adding actually goes off the top edge of the clipboard, and it covers the holes. I can see the holes on the back, so I'm not worried about that. And then once it was dry completely, I trimmed those off, and then I did a quick little sand, and it looks great. I need to cut these apart for the cards, and so I'm going to do that very quickly. It will take much less time than the home decor piece. So all I'm doing is putting them through here, and when I cut the length, so I already cut around them so that they're smaller, but when I cut the length, I am lining up the very edge of the stamp with, and I'm not worried about the top. Actually, I can move it over here. I'm more worried about making sure that each one of these is right on that guide, right on the edge of the guide, this plastic part. And then when I cut, then you have an even reveal. So then between each one, I move it over. And again, I don't know that I cut around it straight. I'm just relying on these edges, so I'm going to go ahead and down here there's just the tiniest little bit, so I'm going to make sure that's on the edge, and then up at the top make sure it is right on the edge of that guide. Hold, cut, and that's pretty close to me, and so I'm just going to go ahead and keep cutting that way. And then once I'm done with that, since it's the same in between each one, then I'm going to move it over, and again the edge, and then I'll move it over to the edge, and I'm just going to keep doing that. And then I have all my little squares, and turn this one this way. Make sure you have the edge right on there. And then, if you look, these will all fit on here, like this. And so I'm going to do a background with all of them. And then on a few of them, I may go ahead and pop one or two up here and there. And the rest of them will be flat. And then I'll have my one of these in the corner with strictly handmade. All right, so that's kind of the plan for my cards. Well, I hope that was a straightforward tutorial for you. So let's go ahead and look back over the cards now that they're finished. And you can see that putting that microglaze on really pulled out the details of the stamping a little bit more. Still very distressed, which I really like. I didn't want the stamping to be really sharp and bold. I really love that just distressed look in the back, kind of the worn distressed look. And then these pops of color in the front with the strictly handmade sign from, or a sentiment from the inspector, and the bold botanicals as our focal point. And then I just kind of made a grid out of these. There are two underneath because I wasn't sure if I was going to offset these or not. So it's a complete pattern on the top of this. I did sew around the bold botanicals, and then I zigzagged the strictly handmade on both of them just to give a little texture. But I just think they look great. They're really fun. And these are an everyday card you could send to anyone that you were just thinking of, or anything that you wanted to say to them in a 5x7 size. Now, here is this fun decor piece that you could just send to pretty much anyone. I love how it kind of has a masculine feel to it. I did add some things that weren't stamped in the background. So these are from some of the new botanical layers, or I'm sorry, it's Layers Organic from the new Tim Holtz Ideology release. So those are just kind of in the background to kind of pull in some of the colors. But I really love just adding that little bit of Uncharted Mariner to the stamps in the background. I love how they just kind of give it that tile look, kind of an old handmade tile look in the back, how the grit paste mimics grout in between them, like it's kind of old and worn away. And it does look strictly handmade, like handmade tile that someone would use in a home or a redo. And the reason I put it on the clipboard is because I thought that an inspector would be using a clipboard as he went around and checked on the progress of the builders and how things were going when they were making it. So if you have any questions after that tutorial, I am happy to clarify them or clear them up. Go ahead and comment in the comment section for this tutorial, or you can comment on my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com. I did post all of the things that I used in my tutorial, but if you forgot, I do have a list at the bottom in the comment section for this video, and also I have a list on my blog. Thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate the time that you took to watch the video, and I hope that you have a very creative day.